Welcome back to another video. It's been ages since I've done one of these, so I thought it's time to do another one. So I've been on a bit of a hiatus. I've had quite a few comments just asking, am I going to do another video? Is everything okay? Yeah, everything's fine. Better than fine. I think the big thing has been this. Happy first birthday. So I'm now a parent, which has been a big change. Yeah, that happened at the beginning of the year and everything's changed. The amount of time you get is just, yeah, totally different. I understand a lot more now when people with kids say they've got no time, and yeah, you understand that a lot more now, and I think it makes you appreciate your parents a lot more, because as a baby you were probably a pain in the arse and they had to be quite patient. So yeah, proud dad. So there hasn't been a lot of time for games. I've probably done more project wise, just an hour here and an hour there, and I've been trying to really reduce this down to 3 projects. I don't want too many because I'll never get any of them done. I think the only one that I've really finished is The Rise of Biko on the Mega Drive, which still has a few bugs. But I'm working on this Doom engine type thing for the Mega Drive. Whether that will be a full game is another thing. It might just stop at a tech demo, but who knows. I mean, I can't put it out as a game like Doom or Doom itself because of copyright, but I could still make an FPS style engine on the Mega Drive, and that's coming along pretty well. I've gone from a Raycaster to something. Ooh, ice cream van. I really fancy an ice cream now. It's either gone from a Raycaster to something which is a bit more polygon based, which for the hardware you'd think the Raycaster is faster, but it's not the most efficient. So I've been looking at BSP trees and other types of more modern sort of rendering techniques to work out what's visible, what's not visible, what walls are visible in front of the others, for example. And the performance is, yeah, good and bad. Probably could have optimized it a lot more with like lookup tables and whatnot, but it's been fun to do, although progress has been slow. The other 2 projects I've been working on are, one is it's kind of like a clone of Soulstar. So Soulstar's a game on the Mega CD which used sprite scaling. Don't think it does rotation actually. It does like a mode 7 effect, but the sprites are mainly scaling, and you get either mode 7 as in you're flying into the screen, or there's like almost like a tank control section where you can rotate and just walk around like a flat plane. So I'm trying to make a game that's a little bit like that, really just as a homage in a way. So I don't want to make it too complex. So however that game worked on the Mega CD, the limitations of it, that's what's in this game, and it should make for a game that's quicker to put together, instead of trying to say, okay, well, where can I take this? I think that's going to have to be a sequel, but for the first game, it's just getting it to work and keeping it simple. And there isn't a huge amount of variety in Soulstar, so maybe once I've got these sections working, you can procedurally generate parts. Maybe that'll make for a boring game. I'm not sure. And it's using a frame buffer pretty much directly, so I'm just plotting pixels, which is great because I get this nice infinite plane. I've had a lot of problems trying to do that in a polygon renderer, just to be able to get like it's like the Saturn did this really well by having this infinite like mode 7 plane that goes right up to the edge of the screen. But doing that in polygons, it's like Minecraft. Once you get really far into the screen, you need a huge number of polygons. But if you do it as a pixel-based effect, it's kind of like raycasting in a way. It's for every pixel on the screen, so you know how many pixels you're drawing, which has worked pretty well. So Dreamcast port is definitely on the cards. I've been trying to build this on an old PowerBook G4 because using SDL, and that's been pretty portable. I didn't want it to require a really fast PC just for like a retro style game. And the last one is a Jaguar spoof homage kind of game. I've been teasing screenshots of it online, and it's a bit of fun. It's done as it's like a fake Jaguar game. Did I say Dreamcast before? Anyway, Jaguar. It was a Jaguar game that never really existed, but it's like a combination of Black Ice, White Noise, and Skyhammer to an extent. Maybe a little bit of Hover Strike in there. And it's just meant to be this janky kind of game that never really existed, but it's a new game that pretends it did. And again, that's using OpenGL, so I'm looking at a PC target, Mac target, and a Dreamcast target with that. But that's going to take a lot longer because it's a 3D game, and even though it looks janky, it still takes forever. Just trying to get all the sprite work done on it, and yeah, you can see why it takes a long time to make games. So, topic for this video, kind of waffle aside, good waffle, because, you know, being a parent's important and stuff. And projects are important. But yeah, I just wanted to pick up on what I talked about in the last video, and that was really trying to get back into the last generation of consoles, so the PS3, 360, and Wii U. Do we include that in the last one? Sort of. Let's say for sake of argument, yes. A few months ago, I bought an Xbox One, and I got a bit frustrated with it, with the patching time and the fact that games on discs weren't really complete, and you had to patch them if you had an online connection, and Halo 5 was like 50 odd gig that took forever to download. I haven't got a fast internet connection. If you've got a fast internet connection, maybe, but then again, that's 50 gig on a 500 gig drive, which is going to fill up pretty quick. But yeah, that was weird. I think the only game that I really played was Halo 1 on the Master Chief Collection, which needed a tiny patch. So that was a weird experience. So I took it back, and then I ended up looking at the PS4, which wasn't getting used very much. I was using it mainly as a Blu-ray player, and for, like, you know, Netflix and Amazon Prime, YouTube, etc. And I realised I wasn't really playing it very much. And it was partially for the same reasons, and I think partially just because the games that I was playing tended to be more of the indie games. And I think I just wasn't using the machine very much. So I decided to get rid of that and focus more back on the PS3. And I think this goes back to the topic of collecting. So where I want to get to today is really trying to pick up on a point that Dean from Escape from Gaming has been discussing the last few weeks, and it's about collectibility and the games industry, of where it's going. And I think the arguments that he gives about having, like, for example, PS3 being the last and 360 being the last generation you can really collect for, because you want to buy these games and you want to play them for years in the future, as long as the discs don't rot and the machines don't break, which is fair enough. And I think a good example of this is Skyrim. So this is a collector's edition of Skyrim. It's patched, it's got all the add-on packs. I think that's all of them. It's got 3. I haven't played the add-on packs yet. And it's a complete package, and it's something you can collect for. And over time, I've bought quite a lot of PS3 games, and I've really enjoyed going back to these games and playing them. And sure, I'll one day run out of these games, but I've got quite a few of them that I've picked up cheap here and there. I've got a lot of PS2 games that I haven't played. I'm probably going to have, you know, more games than you'd ever want to play in your lifetime, unless you were a really, really avid gamer. But I'm sure there'll be games that I'll just never play. You know, the machine will break before I get to play them. But it's nice having the choice. But I think the problem with the PS4 and Xbox One and the generation to come after that is the games you buy on the disc aren't really complete. There will be some games which don't need patching, but the problem you get with these games is games like Street Fighter V and No Man's Sky. The game you buy and what you play on the disc isn't the patched version of the game. And that's a real problem for collectability, because it's great having these discs that you can collect, but if that patch server goes down, it's not collectible anymore. You might end up with a pretty badly, crippled game that requires a 0-day patch. And I think this puts us in a difficult position, because we want to do that, have a game that you can pick up in a few years' time and go, this is something I got on the PS4, this was a really good game. Towards the end of the console's lifespan, there will be collector's editions, something like this, which is a patched game. Yeah, there will be games on the PS4, but for a lot of them, it's hard to say. And I think the problem we've got is Microsoft, when they announced the Xbox One, tried this model where your disc is really just like a license for an online version of the game. So whether you get a code or like PC games, or whether it be more like Steam, and you get this online purchase, which is great, unless the service goes away and then you've lost the game. And I think if you look at a service like PS Plus, that's a really good service, and I really got a lot out of it. It's not a substitute for collecting, in that you pay the money for those games, and as long as you keep paying for them, then you get these games. They call them free games. They're not free, because if you stop paying for your subscription, you lose those games. So it's almost like an extended rental, which is fine. A lot of games, for me, I don't go back to. I'll play it, I'll go, okay, I'm happy, I've had that experience, I don't need to go back to it. Or if I do, I could probably get that game secondhand pretty cheap, because they tend to devaluate badly once they've been on PS Plus. So that's good. I really, really like that service. But where it's going to hit is, and the PS3 being a good example, PS3 games, and I think Vita as well, they're not being not supported, but no new games are coming out after April-ish next year. So it means the games that you've got already, you've got to keep paying for that service. Now, if you've got a modern console, then that's fine, because you're going to keep getting that, new games. But for the old one, you're then paying a retainer to play these games, which isn't great. But then again, by the time you've decided what you want and what you don't want, if you play, maybe see them as extended demos, you go out and buy the full game. So that's okay. So I think the next kind of games is the cloud gaming. Now that's quite attractive in a way, because if you take a service like the Netflix, for example, or Amazon Prime, that's really convenient, because you don't have to buy individual games. So there's like a theme here, going from expensive consoles that you have to keep replacing, physical media, and that was fine for a long time. But because you've now got this weird halfway house between games that are collectible, that you can keep, this PS Plus, where these like extended rentals, which I think could be a big threat. I think if those services did a lot better, maybe that's going to prevent as many physical games being bought. I'm not sure if that's the case, where it's like with the Atari ST, they bundled it with this huge pack of 40 games, and then kids didn't really buy as many physical games, or disc-based games as they used to physical. They're all physical at that point, unless they were pirated from a BBS or something like that. But that damaged the market, and I think a lot of shops didn't really want to sell Atari very much after that. Maybe that was unrelated, but that's what I've read. But whether these kind of services are affecting physical sales, because in the UK, Granger Games has gone, so maybe physical sales are not as big as they used to be. Online are a lot more convenient. You don't have to mess around with downloading it and then installing it and then patching it. You just download the online version of the game. So that there is a benefit with digital games. So going back to the PlayStation Now, cloud gaming, it's really convenient. You don't need an expensive machine, so you can run it on a cheap set-top box. You don't need to patch it, you don't need to install it, and it's cheaper. So if you had something like Netflix where you're paying a flat subscription fee, that's going to be really attractive, because if you look at the market for where games are being played, if you look at games like Fortnite, this free-to-play seems to be popular with teenagers. And we think back to where we were in the early 90s or 80s. We were that audience for buying these games on the Mega Drive, Genesis, Super Nintendo, Amiga, Atari ST, then PlayStation. But we're not really that market anymore. And I think we are clearly an important market, but I think it's the younger generation now which is dictating sales, and that's what the kids want to play. And I think if you can get a service where you can get games cheap on a subscription, I can see parents going for that. It's maybe a better value service. But it has problems, connectivity problems. The games can disappear at any time. You don't really own them. There are huge numbers of problems. And I think we've got, on the left side, collectibility. On the right side, this really convenient service with cloud games, having this massive library. And there's benefits and disadvantages on each side. But having something in the middle seems to be a real problem. And I think that the introduction of the Xbox One, I think it was easy to reject that arrogant claim that, deal with it. This is the way games are going to be. You're going to have these licensing. You can't give a game to someone else. But I think it's coming by the back door now, because the games are so inconvenient. The consoles are expensive. They chuck out a lot of heat. And you've now got these intermediate phases where you've got your launch console, and then you get like the Xbox One X, or you've got the PlayStation Pro, which are like these mid-generation, and then they bring out another one. That's going to upset a lot of people who've invested in one of these consoles. So I think that might not help, but having this clunky media which takes up space and might not really be that useful when you go back and play it in a few years when the patch server's gone. It takes a long time to install. You have to patch it, and it takes up premium space on the drive which you're going to fill. That doesn't seem like a good solution going forward. So you've got these two opposite sides. You've got this ideal that we had with the PS3, Xbox One of collectible games, and you've got this halfway house between the two, and I don't know what's going to happen, whether disc-based sales are going to tail off and the next generation is going to have an optical drive. I think it will, because I could see what would that do to game shops if you're not selling physical based media. Game in the UK is selling a lot of other things. They're selling second-hand phones. They're selling a lot more merchandise, second-hand games for older machines and the new ones as well. But what's that going to do? It's going to really change the market. And what's a bit worrying from that is you're only going to be able to buy games from one place. possibly, you know, well, I suppose you can, even physical game shops, you can buy download codes. I've seen that on a lot of the Switch games, that they're in a box, but they're not really a cartridge, they're a download code. I think it was Wonder Boy I was looking at, and I don't have a Switch, not yet anyway. I want to finish the Wii U games before going for a Switch, but that's weird that these digital games are starting to be sold more in shops, but they're still being controlled by one source. I'm not sure, well, I suppose it's the same as buying a console game. The console manufacturer still produces all the games, and they all get licensed. It was the same with the Mega Drive and the SNES. But I don't know how profitable that would be. I can't imagine going into a shop and taking a tab off a shelf and going, I want to buy my game. I can't see shops being profitable like that when you could put a credit card in online. Now, I can understand if you're a kid and you want to use your pocket money and buy those games, and then use scratch the code off and put it in online as a substitute for a card, or someone that doesn't have a credit card or debit card, or can't have one or doesn't want one. That's fine. But I can't see game shops surviving that if the optical drives disappear. And maybe that's the way Granger Games has gone. Maybe they saw the writing on the wall. But that's a really weird future, having online only games. And I think, are we going to go from there, discs being inconvenient for various reasons, not terribly collectible, so that ruins or diminishes the justification of buying a physical disc, to this online store, to cloud gaming. And I don't think it's a massive leap from the two, that if you buy a game online, that game could disappear. Now, I know the stores are normally pretty good, that even though you can't buy a game new, if you've already purchased it, you can still re-download it. But that disappears. You're still at the mercy of these online providers. And sure, you can go for replacement consoles, back the drive up and restore it, and that's going to work. But is it the same as having a physical disc? I'm not sure. It's a very uncertain time. So I think, for going back to games, collecting, I think retro is caught right up to the current day. I think retro is almost going to become games that you can physically collect. And the 360 came out in 2005. That's going to become retro pretty quickly, in that if you look at where we were, say, in 2010, and you take 13 years off that, you're pre-Dreamcast. So the Dreamcast clearly is retro now. The PS2 is retro. I'm not sure what the time is for a console becoming retro or not. Is it 10 years? Is it 15 years? But the Xbox 360 is rapidly becoming 15 years old. It's getting into retro territory. So is that what defines retro games? And I think, is that what's so attractive about those games, that you can collect them? And for the moment, with the current generation, PS3, 360, and the Xbox One and the PS4, there isn't a massive generational leap. I mean, you go back to games like Wolfenstein: The New Order, you play it on the new machine, and you play it on a last generation machine. Resolution's not as good, the frame rate can be a bit iffy in places, the texture isn't as good, but the gameplay is usually there. And I think you can go back to games like Burnout Paradise and play that, and it still plays perfectly fine, and you don't really care about the graphics. Whereas I wonder, if you did that a few years ago, you go back to a PS3 and go, this looks a bit poor compared to a PS4. But I think once the next generation appears, you're not judging those games on graphics anymore. You're just judging them on being good games that are very collectible. And I think that's a good thing, that we've still got these games that we can still enjoy. But maybe that's the cut-off point. Maybe, the Wii U being a good example. Patches are pretty small. They're not that necessary. So maybe the Wii U is really the last really collectible machine, and the current generation, you know, PS4, Xbox One, being a bit hit and miss. Some games will be collectible. The Game of the Year editions, sure, you'll be able to just put the disc in and it'll work, but maybe it'll be known as a bit of a hit and miss generation. And the next one, who knows, all bets are off. Difficult one is that. I mean, that's really made me think twice about investing in a new machine. Maybe it's better to just, you know, play the games you've got before buying a new machine and not being swept up by new graphics and, you know, new environments and these really quite impressive games when you've got a back catalogue. So maybe it's better to play the back catalogue first and then see how the dust settles. Maybe that's how I'm going to go. I probably will do. I think the only thing that's new is at the moment is the Switch, and that seems to have done really well. So that's still quite an attractive machine, but you know, I've got a lot of Wii U games that I haven't played. So I think just across the board, play the games you've got before going for a new machine. But yeah, it's an odd one. I'm trying to think if there's a point at the end of this. It's kind of been a bit rambling. I don't know if it's come across a bit down in a way, but I don't know. I think it's just a very uncertain time for games and whether you can buy a game and play it later, or whether you buy a game and it's here today, gone later, or whether we should just view games as, you know, like a lot of things, enjoy them while they're there and don't see them as something you can come back to later. I don't like that idea. I always like the idea of going back to old games, either through a disc or a cartridge or even emulation. You can still revisit them. But yeah, what do you think? I've heard, you know, a lot of opinions very strongly one way or the other, but I think once the manufacturers go one route or the other, we're kind of stuck with it. So who knows? Who knows? Right, I think I'll leave it there. I'm not sure how long this has been recording. Probably quite a while. I'm actually recording this on a phone for once, so not using my my camera. Yeah, so please let me know what you think with where we're going with games, and are we getting old and not with the kids anymore? Who knows? Thanks for watching.